Good morning, everybody.
Good
Good
morning,
morning.
everyone.
Morning.
Alrighty, well, we're gonna get started, just because we want to start on time and end on time. So welcome all to session 4 of Ready, Set, Grant. Today we have Libby here from Kelly Nonprofit. So before we dive into content, I want to give Libby the opportunity to share a little bit more about the consulting, the technical assistance services. So yeah, go ahead, Libby.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the RDI team for inviting me today to say hi to everyone. I work with Kelly Nonprofit Consulting. We have partnered with RDI on the Ready Set Grant program since it started in 2019 and worked together on, I think we're now on our 16th cohort together. So it's wonderful. And yeah, so we provide one-on-one technical assistance for groups who participate in this training and who sign up for some additional support outside of these weekly sessions. And we are based in Oregon. Our team is kind of spread out across Oregon and Washington. We have about 20 full-time team members, and we support everything from fund development, board development, helping organizations who are, just kind of getting started as a nonprofit, organizations who are going through transitions, groups that are just trying to, sustain where they're at. So kind of groups at all stages and sizes. We also work with funders. We have about a dozen or more funders who we work with on a regular basis for special giving programs. For example, the Federal Readiness and Leverage Fund we oversee. So there's some, different programs that we oversee. And we also have a marketing and development department and a financial management department where we offer bookkeeping services, CFO services, kind of everything related to financial management. Sorry if I have some background noise. My dog is barking. And so, yeah, we have about 10 spots available in total. 4 groups have already signed up for support. And so we're sorry.
Gotta love the Zoom animals that show up in pretty much every Zoom call I've ever been in. Cats, dogs. One time I was doing a Zoom class and I was teaching a Zoom class and I happened to be in my son's room because he was pretty little and his frogs started croaking throughout the entire session. And I was like, please stop.
Thank you, everyone. So sorry. Wonderful working virtually from home, but always some background noise, it seems like. Anyway, so yeah, we have about 10 spots available for one-on-one support. 4 groups have signed up so far, and we've started working with several of them already. And yeah, so I believe you all have access to the sign-up link. We also have a flyer that kind of gives you an idea of what the support can look like. Some groups use it to have us review and provide feedback on some grants. Some groups want us to help them create a budget or give feedback on a budget. Some groups who are just getting started need a little bit of help with what is the 1023 form and how do we fill that out and what does that look like and what are the steps for getting our tax exempt status. So yeah, we provide a variety of support, and yeah, looking forward to working with several of you. And yeah, Jimena and Christine, am I missing anything?
No, that was great. And they've received the flyer and the link a couple of times. It's also been posted in the chat this morning. It's always so great to have Libby and the Kelly nonprofit team be a part of this. I didn't realize that it was had 16 cohorts because I haven't been around since 2019, but it is so great. And there are several nonprofits who have report back just how much you've helped. Kelly Nonprofit has helped. So I believe you also have Spanish speaking staff as well. So if there are, okay, because I think we have a couple of Spanish speakers or who might have Spanish affiliates in their organization.
Yeah. If you would prefer to be paired with someone on our team who is a Spanish speaker, when you fill out your intake form, just let us know in the intake form and we'll be sure to pair you with someone who can provide that support.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Libby before we get started? All right. Well, if any questions do pop up, of course, put them in the chat. And then if I can't, or if Jimena or I can't answer them, we will send them off to Libby and the Kelly Nonprofit team. Thank you for joining us, Libby. I hope you have a good rest of your day and feel free to stick around and watch the content if you want, but I'm sure you know it by heart as much as we do.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful fall day and a good session. And I will see some of you in the one-on-ones.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Libby. Alrighty, so if there's no questions, I just wanted to follow up if there's any questions from session 3. I know I wasn't here, but if we need any questions, now's a great time. Alrighty. So let's dive in. Group norms, you probably know these by heart now, but just a gentle reminder to be respectful, be kind, and to please keep your camera on when you can, just so you can engage.
Jimena, just so you know, you are not sharing slides.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I was all going through my like slides. Let me do this again. Sorry, guys. Can you see
Pretty
them
sure
now?
you're living in Teletubby land. I don't know what that background is, but it's awesome.
Oh my, wait, you guys still can't see them?
No.
Am I host, Christine?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, guys. Technical difficulties really quick. But my background is from Inside Out. I'm sure if you guys have kids, you guys have probably seen the movies. Okay, I don't know why this is being silly. Sorry. Okay.
Jimena, I'm sharing my slides until we can figure out what's going on with the
Okay,
board.
wait, can you see? Okay, those are yours. I don't know why this is being, I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay, okay, next. Yeah, I'm like, can you just do it? I'm sorry. Alrighty. So what are we gonna cover today? Today, throughout the first 3 sessions, we've been going through like the mission, the vision, and really preparing on how to write the grant. So now today we're gonna dive in a little bit more into the grants themselves, their purpose, their life cycle, and just how to ensure that we're grant ready. So what is the purpose of a grant? The purpose of a grantor, and the grantor is someone who gives the grant, so that those are foundations, organizations. Their main purposes are to make significant contributions to a focus area that's important to them. So for example, if an organization is passionate about youth and education, those are typically the areas that they will invest in. So if your nonprofit serves those demographics, that's who they're going to invest in, and it increases your likelihood of being selected as a grantee. It reduces yearly tax liability, raises their profile in the community, so it just gets them that promotion of like, this is who they do, this is what they do, this is who they serve. the purpose of a grant is also kind of to leave a legacy, and it's dependent for everyone, but some people, some families sometimes want to invest in their community, and maybe they've been there for generations, and they really want to ensure that their family or their mission is beyond just one generation. So they are really focused on legacy and on, yeah. The purposes for a grantee. So grantees are people who receive the grant, or organizations, nonprofits that receive grants. Um, and they're the people who, sorry. They grantees, when or they're selected, they're people that when the funds are given, allows them the opportunity to ensure that the mission and the funds allow them to ensure that the organization is following their mission. When they're selected, it provides funding towards new or existing projects, typically always new. Grants, again, to remind you guys, are more about increasing capacity and just investing in new kind of like pilot programs. And they may also support physical space or the purchase of tangible items. So that may be like chairs for a lobby, playground equipment, so things around that realm. And most importantly, they allow organizations to leverage more funding. So it gives them, again, more capacity so that they can apply for more funding, or that they can, widen their services. And yeah. Anything you would add, Christine?
No, I mean, in particular, this last bullet is probably what a lot of grantors look at, and as a grantee, the more funding you get more funding, like we've been saying these last couple of sessions. In particular, I know a number of funders in the Pacific Northwest who like to be last dollars in. So when you have all of your funding, it's like they want to be the last 1% of it in, or they want to kind of be that hero moment of like, oh, we helped make this project happen. So really it just illustrates what we've been saying these last couple of weeks of funding begets funding.
Thank you for adding that, Christine. So the grantor's responsibilities, they have a few different responsibilities. They usually have to track and report how funds are being spent. So, if you get $5,000, they have to ensure that those $5,000 are being invested into what you said that they were going to be invested, and that they're being spent out in the right way. That may look like writing a report or providing receipts. Really, the requirements are going to differ from grant to grant, and you're always going to, agree to these terms before. So usually nothing's going to come out of left field. And some other responsibilities include that, again, that people meet the guidelines. So like I said, you're going to get some type of contract or agreement. Nothing should come out of left field. And one of their biggest responsibilities is also to ensure that grantees are who they say that they are. And what we mean by that is just that, again, if you're saying that you align with your vision, that, you're serving the people that you say that you're going to serve, and just ensuring that everything, you dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
And one of the things I want to highlight on here is accepting no benefit other than recognition. So many grant organizations, like most grant organizations, can't accept any other benefit. Like they can't get free tickets to an event you're hosting, or they can't at it as a term of the grant. Now, if they're sponsoring the event, it's a different term, it's a different process. But really when it comes to the grant, it is not transactional. When they get something, you get something other than recognition. And recognition isn't always required or always wanted by a grantor. So we have a couple of granting organizations we work with that it says you may not use our name, logo, or anything without specific permission. And so we always have to reach out to make sure you have to reach out to make sure, like, is this okay? Or just, err on the side of caution and don't list them. Say, and funded by other people. So just remember that to check your granting agreement, your contract with them, like Jimena said, because that will outline the terms of the grant, just like you would the terms of a contract with within work.
Thank you, Christine. So what are the grantees' responsibilities? Now that we've explored a little bit about the grantor's responsibilities, the grantee's responsibilities are first and foremost to use the money for the intended purpose. So that means, again, if you were designated $10,000 for a certain expense or a certain project, you have to use those $10,000 for that project. Even if you have extra funds, if you have extra funds and you're curious about whether you can spend that elsewhere, you always have to contact your grantor and just ask beforehand. Again, because you don't want to break that contract, if you perhaps assume that you can spend it, then maybe in the future you're not going to be funded because grantors are going to say, oh, well, like they didn't really allocate all the funds appropriately. And also something that would demonstrate that you didn't use all the grant money accordingly would be your reporting or your receipts, if that's something that's requested. Again, to report any deviations from the original budget or project. If your project suddenly may cost more or cost less than anticipated, that's something that you should usually report to your grantor, just again to ensure transparency. And perhaps if you need an additional $1,000, they may support you in that need. So just again, it's always about transparency and being honest with your grantors. Like Christine mentioned before, to give no benefit other than recognition. So again, you're not gifting people, you're not giving them freebies. It's just appreciation and just recognition, whether that's putting their logo on flyers or a banner. Everyone can do recognition however they please. Other important responsibilities are to spend the money within the grant period. So grant periods may differ. Sometimes your grant period is going to be 12 months, 18 months. Sometimes it'll be years. It's all dependent on your contract and on your agreement with your grantor. So if you ever have any questions of like, how long do I have to spend this money? Always communicate with that grantor or with whatever contact you were given.
Jimena, I want to add on that too.
Yeah.
If you find yourself like you've got the money, you've got the grant, you're moving forward, and your grant period comes to an end, but you haven't spent the money, or the construction project called because you all of a sudden there's a flood on the playground and you can't actually get the work done. The thing that you can do, actually, I want to say 99.9% of grantors want you to be successful. They want you to spend the dollars. And so as long as you're communicating with them and saying, hey, I recognize our grant period ends on October 31st. However, we're not going to be able to spend the funds because of X, Y, and Z. Can we have an extension? And give them like, can we have a 3-month extension? Can we extend this for 6 months? And I would encourage you to communicate earlier than 6 days before the deadline. But if you can communicate with them what you need as the grantee, then they can be able to extend that. I had that exact same thing happen last year. Is I had a grant that is like, hey, we have not spent through these dollars yet because we had to make some shifts and we're not going to be able to spend them down in the grant period. Can we have an extension of 3 months? And the grantor said, absolutely, thanks for communicating. So really that back and forth communication piece is vital when it comes, because you have a relationship with these funders now. And they want to talk with you. They want to know what you're doing, and you want to tell what you're doing because they're building trust for then those future grants that Jimena is talking about. Is the next time is like, hey, they did what they said. They communicated well. We have trust. They've made a good investment. So yes, sorry, I got a little on a soapbox about building trust with grant funders. But spending it within the grant period and communicating if you need to extend that grant period time.
Thank you for adding that, Christine. And then lastly, again, emphasizing that you're accurately reporting throughout the project or throughout the duration of the grant. So again, the reporting requirements are going to be different from each different grantor, but just ensure that you're accurately reporting how you spent what money, what you received. Some other good information to gather is like, what demographic did you serve? How long did you serve for? Like, how many people benefited from the work that you're doing?
The last thing I would add on the slide is this second bullet to the bottom that says return any unspent money. I don't know any funder who wants money back, because it is, like we said at like Jimena said 2 slides ago, is like it is their job to give money out as part of they have to give money out in order to be serving. And so if you have unspent dollars, this is where that communication piece is really important. It's like, hey, we were under budget, and we have $1,000 left over. I would like to allocate those dollars to X, Y, and Z to serve the mission. And so again, if you communicate well with your program officer, you will get an email back that says, that sounds great. Thanks for the informing. So really, grants are just a relationship and building a strong partnership with people who have money to help you. And so I'd encourage you to continue to build really strong relationships with them by communicating. Okay. I'm going to take over for just a minute in terms of this. I have a quiz for everybody. And what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen and launch a poll. And let's see how you do. You should be able to answer these questions based off of what Jimena just taught us. So there are 4 questions. Does everybody see the poll?
Yes.
Thanks, Taylor. All right, I'm going to let this set for another. This is just some fun to keep you engaged instead of us just talking at you. I'm going to give it 5 more seconds.
I realized it said only 2 out of 4 were answered, but then when I hit the submit button too soon, but I kind of figure out how to get to the other 2 questions. So
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that, June.
no, it's okay. It's in my bad.
All right, I'm going to end the poll. And what I will do is what we can do is go through these questions a little bit. So the first question is, can you put the grantor's name in your monthly newsletter? We had a couple people respond yes, a couple people respond no, and most of you responded maybe. And that is the right answer, is maybe. I would look at your grant agreement, because most of the time it will be in there that says you may or may not share. And if it's not in there, reach out to your program officer and ask, like, hey, we'd love to share, Ford Family Foundation, we'd love to share that you are supporting this project. Is that okay? And in an email, it's back and forth, it's written, you have it. And I would print that email and put it as part, and when they say yes or no, and put it as part of your grant files, so you can refer back to it. If somebody says, wait a minute, we weren't allowed, you can say, actually, Max said I could. Max actually does work for the Ford Family Foundation. If you don't know him, he's fantastic. Second question. So good job, everybody, on that one. Second question was, can you use unexpended funds as you wish? Nobody said yes. A good set of you said no. And some of you said maybe. And the answer is maybe. Talk to your program officer. So really, it's about, like, if you have unexpended funds, go talk to your program officer. They may say, yeah, do whatever you want with it. They may say, nope, send it back. So it really kind of depends. Question number 3 was, what would you do if your project changed during the funding cycle? The answers were nothing, give the money back, or talk to a program officer. And so many of you answered correctly, which is talk to the program officer. And that's actually right. So it was all tricks, just trickery here. Every answer is talk to your program officer. And when you don't know something, the answer is talk to the program officer. And then the bonus question is, what is a foundation's corpus? I realize we did not talk about that today. We talked about it in previous sessions. And the answer is, the short answer is, this is the funding that the grantors have to give in order to, that's what they have to give out. So the principal or the endowment amount, the interest of the endowment, and these are the people that this is what happens when how they give money away. Jimena, do you think you have screen sharing abilities now?
Yes, let me try again. I don't know what's happening, but
Good job, everybody. That poll's always fun.
okay. Can you guys see it now? Okay, thank you. I'm like, I don't know. Awesome. So thank you, Christine, for that, and good job, everyone. We didn't trick you guys. So now we're going to dive in a little bit into the life cycle of a grant. So whenever we're applying for a grant, we want to make sure that we're prepared. And what that means is going to be different for everyone. But typically you want to get together with your team and you want to see like, what's our goal? What do we want to do? Like what are our needs? And so you kind of want to maybe, depending on your need or depending on your project, you'll build a list of different grants that you can apply or different opportunities that are available. And with that, you're also going to ensure that you have all the requirements that the applications need. So it's like you have your mission statement, you have your vision, you have a description of the project. And once you do that, you also then want to also see like, do you have a relationship with this funder? So like we talked about a little bit, research the organizations or the foundations that you're seeking grants from, because a lot of the time, maybe you might know people, especially if you kind of work within the same sector or within the same community. And sometimes the distinction between being selected and not being selected is if you have that relationship with that funder or that grantor. So again, it's very relationship based, and to make sure that it's not so transactional, although yes, you're being given money, a lot of the time people want more of that buy-in and being more invested. So it's like how are you? Sending emails, inviting people to events if you're hosting an event or if you host workshops, anything like that. When you're writing, the next step of writing in submission, again, if you're able to, get it proofread by people, if you have a grant expert in your network, just to ensure that, that your narrative and the finances, the budget, and everything that you include is kind of proofread and that it's to the best quality possible, just to ensure that you have the strongest application. And then after that, funders will review your application. Some funders are quicker than others. Some of them will let you know in a couple months whether you were selected or not. Some of them sometimes take a few months. And during this process, you may be contacted by program officers or funders for clarifying questions. So if anything was left uncertain, this is sometimes something that people do. And sometimes you don't hear back at all, but you are able to ask for feedback. I just want to let everyone know because I think sometimes some of us are like, oh, I didn't get this, but you don't really know why. You don't know what to improve on. So that's something that you can ask for. And with the grant term, if awarded, again, every grant term is going to be different according to your grantor and according to everything. So just ensure that you know how long your term is. Typically, most grant terms tend to be about a year or tend to be in those like 6 months periods of 18 months, 24 months, those kinds of increments. So yeah, just be sure that you know how long your grant term is and that you know that your project or whatever you're accomplishing is going to be accomplished within that time period. And like Christine said, if you need an extension, reach out to your program officer, and more often than not, they will give you that extension. Lastly, reporting, that's the last step. Again, when you just ensure to report everything that you did, how your funds were spent, what project was completed, or how your project or in the funds benefited the community or the demographic that you serve. Anything you want to add, Christine, to that? No? Cool. So now we're here with different types of grant funding. There are 4 different types of grant fundings. Program, which includes supporting, again, certain activities or certain expected outcomes. We have capital, so that's when you buy anything more like physical or generally something that's going to be long lasting, more like physical assets, I would say. Capacity building, so that's when we're investing in visioning, fundraising, governance, and then general operating. And those are the unicorns of all funding because they're unrestricted and you can allocate them as necessary. Typically, this may look like spending money on those general operating expenses, maybe overhead like printing and things like that. Any questions on the different types of funding? Or
This
is any,
might be the last time you see the slide. We might show it one more time next week. I don't know. We'll find out.
or does anybody have any questions on where their project would kind of fall or where their needs would fall? Alrighty. So checking in, so you guys have all seen this slide a few times before, or who, what, when, or who, what, where, when, why, how. Um, we've all worked on the project charter and on the budgets. Like, does anybody want to share how that has gone? Any challenges they've experienced? Or do any experts have any advice on how to help or make this process easier for others?
Mark put in the chat, start early, and I couldn't agree more. Start as early as possible.
I have a question when you're talking about the health of an organization. Is that just related to finance or is that related to like position in the community more often? What do you think on that?
I think it's both. I think it's pretty much everything. People are going to look at like the finance side of things and look at all of the different components of it. And if there's any abnormalities that you should be looking at or anything that's changed of like, oh, maybe we went into a deficit for a year, but hopefully there's a way that that's described. But also, what is the standing in the community? It's hard to tell this, but has there been a lot of turnover in the organization? Have they gone through like 4 executive directors in 4 years? What does that tell you about the organization? Or maybe it's even like the same executive director for 30 years now, and what does that tell you? So really, it's kind of the holistic piece of the health of the organization from tip to toe.
Thank you.
Debbie, I see your hand.
Yes, I feel I've written a few grants and every grant asks for something a little bit different in the budget. And sometimes they don't clarify it very well. When they want the current budget or the organizational budget, this recent grant I wrote, I just did the organizational budget from January of this year through the current time. Another grant I did it for all of last year's budget, and then of course the project budget. So I'm a little confused. What is the standard for, and then, also the one grant didn't ask for anything but the project budget, which made me nervous because usually they always want the organization budget. So I went ahead and included it just because I was nervous that they hadn't asked for it. And I couldn't get through to them. I mean, I tried obviously to call, but they didn't get back. So by the deadline. Anyway, so can you clarify any of that?
I can try to, and of course it's going to be different funder to funder. But what the instinct tells me is, one, you did the right thing by trying to reach out to get clarification from the organization. If you can't reach them, I would scour their website to see if they have examples on their website that you can download, or if anybody else has gotten a grant, reach out to them because they are so they are a resource. When it asks for a current budget, what I would say it's whatever is the most recently approved budget by your board. So, or by your organization. So what are you working on in 2020? We are currently working on, RDI is currently working on our 2026 budget, which will go to our December board meeting for approval. And so next year, when we are applying for grants, we will send them the current approved budget from 2026. So that's what I hear when you ask that question around current budget. And would anybody like to add something different to that? Debbie, does that help a little bit?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Absolutely. Budgets are tricky. And when I think it was really interesting when you said that they didn't ask for an organizational budget, because I agree that is a little odd. Though it could be also the amount of dollars that they're giving. They may recognize, like, not knowing anything about the grant you applied for, but if it was, let's say, a $3,000 grant, they may be like, you know what, we don't need an organizational budget. We just want to know how these dollars are going to make an impact on this project, and might save their board some time. I sit on a board in my region that is that way. We don't ask for an organizational budget. We ask for what is the program budget or what is the project budget, because we have such small dollars that we don't want to know what it looks like in your organization. We want to know specifically how it's going to impact the project or program.
Any other questions or advice? Alrighty, we'll move on. So now we're gonna dive a little bit into your need statement. Your need statement is a statement that really describes your why. Often when we're applying for different grants, funders will ask, like, why this project? Why now? And those questions are a good opportunity to kind of share what you're trying to solve. So perhaps your project is trying to solve a lack of resources or a need in your community. So that's a good opportunity to kind of, in a short, brief answer, provide why it's needed, what would happen if you didn't do this project or if you didn't assess this need. And some other questions that are kind of connected to this is like, how do you know that this project is needed? So for example, like, have you been talking to community members and they've all expressed a need for this? Is this something that lost funding but existed years ago and was a great asset to your community? Do you have any data that really like reinforces or supports your project? So if you ever have so whenever you're developing your need statement and kind of describing your why to funders, really think about like, what data or what evidence or support do I have that supports my project or my desired project. Anything you would add, Christine? No. So a quick little tip is that stories and stats really help. So when you're able to provide that storytelling piece, whether it's personal or someone that you know, it really is heartwarming and it really can determine whether you receive funding or not. Storytelling really connects people. It's something that goes beyond just the application or like beyond numbers. Although statistics and numbers and data is really important and helpful, sometimes that storytelling element is more beneficial. And you don't always get an opportunity to kind of meet someone and tell them the whole story. So if you're able to share a brief story or some brief numbers that can support your project or your idea, that's really helpful. And we want to emphasize to include both, because you may have people that are more like logistical and more Like what are the numbers, what's the data? But you might also have people that are making that decision. They're like, maybe the data matters, but like, oh, this is so lovely that this happened, or like that you found this need. So yeah, so just that to ensure that you're including both stories and stats.
One of my favorite quotes that I actually said yesterday when I was on the phone with somebody is facts and data make you credible, and stories make you memorable. And so those facts and data really help with people if they can't. Some people are really analytical and they were like, give me the facts. What are the facts so I can make a decision? And so that data, those facts are really going to help them make a sound decision on whether or not to fund you. Whereas, and some people are story oriented, so they want the narrative, and that's why sometimes grants feel repetitive, or like you feel like you just answered it, but they're looking for ways that people are going to take in information and make a good decision. All right. Speaking of making good decisions, we are going to go into a breakout room and talk about the need that you are having. So this is going to be part of, this is going to help you with your need statement. And I'm going to put the questions in the chat, so feel free to copy them or take a picture of the slide, because you won't be able to see these when you're in the breakout room, of course. So really, like, what kind of stories or data will best demonstrate the need for the project that you're working on, or a project that you're working on? How many parents are on a 504, Jody? How many, what are people working on? Or how many hours a day are they spending trying to figure out the answer to the problem that they're working on? So really, what are the stories or the data that really demonstrates, and how can you easily track this? What things do you have on in your work that you can track this? So this is a good place to think about the passion for your project that translate into mission and vision, and what are the data pieces, what are the facts that support that passion. So you're going to go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. And if you are having problems with breakout rooms or have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you in 10 minutes.
I just joined late, so I'm not connected to a breakout room.
Let's put you in one, Nikki.
All right, thanks.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you guys all had some wonderful conversations. Would a few of you mind sharing? Wait, was someone speaking? Cool. All right. So would a few of you mind sharing what you guys discussed in your guys' breakout rooms?
I will, since nobody else is popping up. So we in our group, we were really lucky that a guy that's sitting on a board for people that are going to be doing granters was in there, and he talks a lot about like things that he would be interested in seeing, like what kind of data. So that was interesting to see like firsthand what kind of data would be important to them. And then like he talked a lot about demographics, um, like who your population is that you serve, if they're minority English speaking or speak a different language, just a lot of those general things that a lot of grants want. Um, but in my mind, I had kind of always been like, oh, that's for like their reporting purposes to the state or something else like that. I didn't realize how much like the people on the board would be interested in that information as well. And then we talked a lot about, we just, not a lot, but briefly touched on how you can get the data that you need, um, and then and collect the stories and figure out what your need, the community's need is. So.
Thank you for sharing, Kaylee. Can you share a little bit about some of the strategies or tactics that you guys talked about to help collect that data?
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about it for very long, but we talked about like doing different surveys. Um, and then also reaching out to like your county or even the state with the census reports that they do and all of the demographic reports that they do every couple of years, depending on where you're at, um, to get like the real demographics, but then also just like the community need, just getting out in your community and being involved and talking to people.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kaylee.
Yeah.
I was just going to say one thing I forgot to mention in our group is that we tally everybody who comes to our door. So we always have a population for each event as well. So that's always a statistics that's easy to get. So anytime if you're like we're a museum, but our Grange could do the same thing. So.
Debbie, what might be, I'm sure you do this, but what might be really interesting is like how, because you're also like the insulin storage for the Elgin, right?
Right.
And so like how many people use insulin in your community? And then that's a piece of data that you could have is like 12, whatever insulin. Elgin's a little tiny, so maybe like 20 families rely on the museum for this storage or for this service.
Yeah, we only do this it would just be an emergency situation. Yeah, but that's a really good point. In fact, we should probably get that statistics ahead of time. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you,
We
Debbie.
talked a lot about the data source and making sure that it's reliable and can be verified because people will check. They want to make sure that, you're not fudging numbers or, trying to expand on things. It's real important to make sure you get different sources. And when you do use a source, quote it at least, in some way that this is the 25 census saying this so that there is some accuracy to what you're saying. Because, there are people who will expand on a grant and get caught out.
Thank you, Joanna. And another resource that is good besides the census is like Oregon by the Numbers. I know it's exclusive to Oregon, but for all of you Oregonians, that's a great resource. And I believe they just released it recently, so it's as accurate.
I put the link in the chat too for anybody
Thank
who's
you,
interested in
Christine.
that. Look at Taylor showing us Oregon by the Numbers. That. Yeah, I wish every state as a organization that serves all 3 states, I really wish every state had some sort of resource like this. And if anybody knows of anything for Washington or Idaho, or generally for the Pacific Northwest, that would be great. I also think Business Oregon, I'll try and find it. I was talking with one of my colleagues. Business Oregon has a community snapshot tool. So you can look at specific, again, it's Oregon centric. But you can look at snapshots of education, demographics, and through Business Oregon. I will find that link and put it in the follow-up email.
Thank you, Christine. Would anybody else like to share? Alrighty, well, thank you to those who shared, and we're gonna move on. So now we're gonna dive into your project description. Within your project description, this is again where you're kind of describing more of the outcomes, some of your goals, activities, because funders tend to be very outcomes based. They want to know like what's going to be the outcome of being funded, what's going to be the outcome of this project. So this is so in this portion of your project charter, Within the area of deliverables is where you can kind of add some notes. But again, when we were talking about goals and when we're talking about activities, one example would be of an activity would be like providing tutoring services to teens or to students who need additional support. The deliverable there is that 20 teens or X amount of teens are going to be receiving professional tutoring. And then an outcome then that you can track is like, oh, 10 students increased their math scores or whatever that data is, but that's one example. And throughout this, funders will also sometimes ask for like a timeline of like how long did it take for that. So they may be like, oh, you from September of 2025 to June of 2026 was when you provided the tutoring services. This also led to 75% of the students passing their state test, or any of that data that you can acquire is good to include in this portion. Would you add anything to that, Christine?
No.
Okay, cool. Before I move on, are there any questions? Cool. Red flags. So you guys all should have received an email attachment with some funder red flags. If you did not, please let us know and we can include it in the chat or send it to you. So with red flags, we kind of, again, everybody has different levels of expertise. Some of you guys have been writing grants forever. Some of you have never written a grant, myself included. So this kind of document just kind of provides some cautionary tales and just kind of some advice around grant writing. So some red flags that can be prevented, hopefully. So some of them include not providing your overhead or your direct costs of a project. It can include
I'm sorry, I feel like you're freezing.
I think it might be my Wi-Fi.
Okay. I'm going to take over just for a minute to let's see if your Wi-Fi catches up. So really this slide and what we're here is like what gives funders pause. And so make sure you check out the handout and let us know in the chat if you haven't gotten the handout, of course. Free candy and windowless fans absolutely should give everybody pause, not just funders. Thanks, Mark, for the levity. But before we really dig in, I want you to know that really be kind to yourself. If you don't get a grant, it very likely isn't because it's not a worthy project or it's not, or you didn't write a good grant. It's really because many cases of rejection are from a funder. Really, it's simple fact is they don't have enough money. And even now, like we are seeing more and more people requesting grants and less funds being available. So it's just what is available to give to the organization. So for instance, RDI was declined a grant with the Oregon Department of Education. They awarded 35 grants, but had 360 grants to review before they could award it. So their funding was very limited in terms of and it wasn't because we didn't write a good grant. It was just because of what was available. So please give yourself grace if you start getting declinations. However, there are some fun grant writing red flags that it's not necessarily red flags of the funder, but red flags to funders in your grant proposal. So some of those are on that list, and some of them look like your organizational leadership does not represent the population you serve. So if you say you are serving a Latino, a high Latino demographic community, and your organizational leadership is made up, the board or the executive director and the leadership team is made up of white people or people that don't have a Latino experience, then funders are going to look at that and they're going to say, wait a minute, how can you actually prove that you understand what this community needs? Now you can address that and say, we recognize that we don't have the same lived experience. However, we worked on this grant with a committee of people from this community. And so you can help work through those red flags, if you will, by setting yourself up for success. Another one is there's a disproportionate overhead or indirect cost. And we talked about this in, I think, last session or 2 sessions ago. And really the aim is to keep your overhead costs below 25%. So this is kind of a game when you're trying to draw out as many program expenses as possible from overhead and agency budget. So your program expenses could be, does it cost you to have, like, in order to do this program, what are the expenses that happen? There's a staffing expense, which can be considered overhead, but you can't do the program without the staff. And so there's a way to frame that in your grants to talk about. Some of the overhead might be like, if you're lucky enough, Paula, I'll make sure you get that. Thank you. Some of you might be lucky enough to work for an organization or be a part of an organization that pays for insurance or childcare. RDI just started a new childcare coverage policy for the staff that travels. And so like those are overhead pieces, really direct result overhead pieces. So really trying to pull out what are the direct costs versus the indirect costs of the program. Many red flags that funders look at is like, how are you evaluating or measuring your success? How do you begin to address this? If you say that you are going to have 35 Latino youth in your leadership program, how are you going to measure that other than just saying just showing up, having them show up? How do you really measure it? And what's the impact of that? This next one that I have listed here is this idea that funders fund a competing nonprofit and occupying the same niche. And so it's like, are you working and partnering and understanding what your community is doing? So if you have a very specific mission and somebody else in your community has a very specific mission and you are both going after the same grant, those funders are going to say, wait a minute, have those two talked at all? Here's RDI and here's Rain Catalyst. Brian's not here, so I can't pick on him. Here's Rain Catalyst and RDI, and they're going after the same grant in the same community doing the exact same thing, but they haven't talked. What's going on? And they will definitely have a question about that. So just know that, like, if you're working towards that, then towards something that's kind of niche or kind of specific, then be sure to, sorry, Jimena just messaged me. Her internet is being choppy, so you get me for the rest of the session. So just be sure to like communicate with your community or people that are doing the same work as you and see if there's a way to partner and get to a place of partnership and collaboration like we talked about last time. It's like, how do you partner to the betterment of your community to fulfilling both missions? Board members that don't donate to your organization or contribute expertise. This is a red flag. And the easiest way I can put this is if your number one supporter board members don't invest in your projects or your program, why should any funder? So that is the simplest way I can put that. And I know like the Murdoch Trust Foundation looks for 100% giving board. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're 100% financially giving. Maybe they're getting funding or maybe they're giving expertise. But being able to articulate that in your grant is really important. That says like 50% of our board has donated over $1,000 to our organization, but the other 50% have brought in matching donations or have provided expertise on the program that we're doing. So really being able to articulate and illustrate how your board is supporting the projects, the organizations, the programs that you're doing. One of the things that really irks me as a funder when I sit on when I sit and read grants in my own organization that I sit on is assuming that the reader, me, knows the organization, or making an assumption that the person reading knows everything about the cause that you're doing, because we don't know, and funders don't know. And I think Taylor might have some experience with this as well, as reading grants and being like, I have no idea what they're talking about. How can I support this? Sorry to pick on you, Taylor.
No, you're right.
Yeah. And again, I think 2 sessions ago, I said some of the best things you can do as a grantee is sit on a review panel for funding, because then you can really understand, like, what are people telling? Are they telling a good story? Or are they making assumptions in what for the reader? And then last way is your budget. If your budget is formatted, it's incorrect, or math is wrong, or even if there's typos, really have somebody else read your grant proposal before you send it in to look for those things. I am not an editor. I have terrible grammar. I love commas. Commas are my best friend in writing. And I always send it to somebody to say, like, hey, where should I, who's the editor? Who's the grammar police here? And so I send it to my colleagues, or I send it even to my best friend, who is very much that person, and said, where do I need to make these edits? Because I want it to make a clear picture. I want it to be professional, and I want it to be impressive. Absolutely. So I am actually going, Amanda, can you stop sharing your screen and I can go ahead and share my screen?
Yes, and I just wanted to say there's a question from Paula in the chat. Is there a
Oh.
specific way to quantify the gift of expertise from BOD?
Does anybody have an answer to that? I have a loose answer, but I wonder if there's an expert in the audience. Okay, no experts in the audience. So whatever I say,
The
go.
only thing that comes to mind for me is that you would do it as an in-kind contribution.
Yeah, Paula, that's what my guess is as well, is like, let's say you have a formal event planner on your board, and they say, I will donate 10 hours of event planning experience for our annual fundraising gala. So it is this in kind of like, how much would that normally charge? What is the market cost? And what I would encourage everybody to do is, if you have those things, make sure you're sending them in kind receipts. There's actually a legal form that you can send, just like you would give a tax write-off or a donation receipt. You can give an in-kind receipt, and you just list, like, Christine gave 10 hours of volunteer time or 10 hours of expertise, which the fair market value according to their company is $300. And so you can have that in your records, plus it's a tax write-off for the company or for the individual. So, and I'll see if I can find an example, but even if, like, you're in a small community and your local internet service provider is hosting your website for free or giving you free internet, those are in-kind donations, and sending those receipts quantifies it for you and also for them. Really great question, Paula. Okay, so we're going to jump into part 3. Hopefully. So, are you ready? It's a great question. Did you plan? Have you done all of the work? Have you started early? Did you read it 3 times before you went? I think those are such great suggestions in the chat. So, things to keep in mind when you are planning to write your grant is really the length and complexity of the grant. So, is this something that you can write today? Is it something that's going to take a big team? Is it something that's going to take a few weeks? So it really is a matter of what is the complexity of the grant and does it match the complexity of the project? The other thing is, what is the project? What type? Is it a capital program capacity? Remember that slide with the 4 rectangles? It really dictates the planning that's required. Does it, if you have a massive capital grant that you are renovating a historic theater and it's a $250,000 project, this is a true story. When did I start planning? We started planning a year before that, found our funders, our, first 10% funders beforehand, and then started doing grant writing. So it's really about that's a big project, requires a lot of planning for the project itself, which means it requires a lot of funding planning as well. Are you ready? Is that project ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to take on, if it's a new project, are you ready to take it on? Do you have the time capacity to take that on? And then, yeah, any thoughts on this? Anything you would keep in mind other than these things when you're starting to plan your grant for your projects or programs? Mark.
I sit on one of the committees for Parks and Rec for the state, and they often say the first time a lot of people get denied, second and third time they get approved. And I've heard that in other places as well, that sometimes second try is when they actually get approved for it. And that includes other state entities. So it's not always a one and done. A lot of times people refine and go reapply the second year.
That's right. And you're also building, they may have never heard of the organization before. So they have to build trust. They have to understand, they have to know what they're investing in. So let's explore these steps a little bit further and see if your project or your program or whatever you're working on is submission ready. As we go through this next section, ask yourself, what actions will you need to take prior to starting your proposal? Maybe make some notes on it because we might have a breakout room later to discuss those very actions. So think that through. So let's see, let's figure this out. What's this look like? Technical requirements. If your funder is a previous funder of yours, have all of your reporting requirements been met for the past? If no, review your original your grant award or your grant agreement, and which generally notes the terms of the agreement, and make sure you submit those beforehand. I think I jumped ahead a little bit, but that reporting requirements are met. So if you've been awarded before and you haven't met those requirements, get those done before you submit again. Because otherwise, a lot of grant agreements will say you cannot submit a new report until you've met the requirements or until your final reporting has been accepted by the organization. So if you're going along, you've built a grant for year 2, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I did all this work and now they're not going to fund me because I haven't closed the book on chapter 1 of this relationship, then you've lost a little bit of time and a little bit of trust, and probably a lot of bit of trust with those funders. So technical requirements also is the eligibility requirements. I think during our last session, somebody had to go through like an eligibility quiz before they could even find out information about the funder they were assigned. Many places will have an eligibility quiz. Does your mission align? Are you serving the right region? Are you a 501c3? Are you asking for the right thing? Are some grant organizations won't fund overhead or won't fund staff costs? Is your project directly rated to staff or artist fees? Then you may not be eligible. So really understanding the eligibility requirements. If you think it's a no or think it's a yes, just review the funding priorities and the start and stop dates of the grant term, and to make sure your organization or request meet those. Like I said, geographic location, limits and required formatting, all of those things. And then preliminary discussion with funder representative. This isn't always a requirement. In RDI world, it's always a requirement, even if it doesn't have one on there, but at least trying to. So some small organizations will say, don't reach out to us. And so, respect that. But if it's allowed, request a meeting or a phone call or an email prior to applying to discuss your project. I think we talked about this, and I know we talked about this in session 1 or 2, is like, this will save you time, money, energy, and resources. If you can spend 30 minutes to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Does this align? We'll have an opportunity next week, actually, for some of you to say, this is a project I'm working on, Ford or OCF, Research Foundation. What do you think? Can you give us some feedback on that? So consider, how would you approach that? The narrative, the big old narrative. Some of them are short, some of them are long, some of them have like 400 questions, some of them have 2 questions. This is where you're telling your story. And some of them have character requirements or maximums or minimums, and just really being sure to watch those as you're writing your narrative. But really, have you included all of the requested information and argued all aspects of your case? And if you haven't, if you feel like you haven't, or a volunteer has read through it and says, I don't think you're making a case here, make sure you include enough information for a funder to understand all aspects. Is it enough information? That Oregon Department of Education grant that RDI didn't get, we got to see the review panel notes. And there was one person who was like, there's not enough information here for I see what you're going to do, but not how you're going to do it. Well, again, other people saw the how, but one person in particular was like, I don't see this. I'm like, okay, we did not put enough information. I appreciate that feedback. So as we continue to write our grants in the future, we can hone that in a little bit more. But really, it's like, what is the information, and are you matching what they are requiring? Arguing the why, there's many ways to do this. Review how the funder discusses relevant issues. If you are working on houselessness, or if you're working on food insecurity, or if you're working on public art, like, how do they refer to it? If they call it a widget, call it a widget. If they call it a wadget, call it a wadget. But really match their lingo or their language to their language, so then that they can see themselves in this grant, in this project or program. And most of all, just really demonstrate the alignment with the funder mission, values, and focus areas. So a lot of the times I actually like to find the funder mission and put it somewhere in the grant that's not be like dishonest with it, but find the funder mission, use those words in their mission or in their vision throughout the grant, because it just shows alignment with what's going on, or with the grant you're applying for. Okay, community engagement. Having community engagement is really important, whether it is like you've asked a couple of people, done a survey, there's people involved in what you're doing. But really what this can highlight is your program, your organization, your project, whatever it is you're working on is reflective of the community. Like I said earlier, if like you don't have board members who represent the audience that you serve, get the community involved to show that we may not have the story, but we have leads, we have experts, we have expertise in the room helping us shape this. Incorporating community input in the planning and the design absolutely is important, and being able to illustrate how you do that is really great, because again, the community buy-in is your community volunteers, your partners. The buy-in is the #1 best storytellers. Like, our community needs this. We want this. Thinking of Debbie is like, if she has to apply for a grant to update the insulin cold storage for the emergency time, is like, we have 25 families who rely on this during the cold months, and and here are 3 support letters from those families and here's a story that tells you about excuse me, of when it was used. Debbie, I'm giving you all sorts of cheat sheets here for your next grant. It's helpful when you have a very, very niche, interesting story to tell. It sticks with me. And what are the partnerships that are formed? And so how do you show those partnerships with the community whether they're volunteers or other organizations? Do you have an MOU? We talked about this. Or are there letters of support? Okay, we are going to go into another breakout room, and I am going to, oh, there's something in the chat. Hold on. I missed something in the chat. Oh, sorry, Taylor. I missed you. Any suggestions on letters for recommendation, who to ask? Mark, that's a great question. And the answer is, it obviously it depends on what you're working on, but a letter of recommendation to support your grant, let's say it's with the Parks Department and you're building new playgrounds, or you're building, like, I would do one that's a really good story. So kids or parents that use that, it's like, I love coming to this park because it's a block from my house and I get to walk there. And I really recommend that we support the installation of trees or new benches or sunshade, because in Ontario it's super, super hot in the summer. Whatever the story is. So that's one. Another could be other partners that use the facility or is aligned with the work that you're doing. So let's say it's not the park, but Lions Club, and like you really want to host a youth fair, a youth career readiness fair through the Lions Club. And so, like, who are some of the partners who would also benefit from that? Teachers. And so, like, you can go from informal, like parents and students, to formal of administration, city, even for that matter. Like, where are those partners coming in? And even if they're not a full-on, like, going to sign an MOU partner, but they benefit from the work that you're doing as well. Okay, give me a second. I will get the breakout rooms. Oh, Jimena, did I lose Jimena completely?
No, I'm here. I was gonna say, do you want me to open them? I can open them.
Yes, but before we do that, let's put in the chat the questions, and what you're going to do. I realize I didn't even show the slide, but what you're going to do is have a conversation about those actions. Remember, I told you to start thinking about those actions because there might be a breakout room. Well, here we are. What actions can you do to get ready for your proposal? Do you have your organizational documents ready? Like we did that chase that, oh, thank you, Jimena. We did that scavenger hunt in the first session. Do you have those things? Do you have a realistic work plan? What is it? What data do you need to find to justify the need? So when you get into your breakout rooms, answer those questions. Jimena just put them in the chat, so feel free to copy those down or take a picture of them. When we come back in about 10 minutes, I think is the timing, we'll want to hear from you. Ready, set, go. All right. Who came up with an action that they want to share? What are you going to do in the next 30 days? Or tomorrow? Paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. Paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. Your action could be signing up for technical assistance with Kelly Nonprofit. If you haven't done that, look back in the chat to grab that link. That could be an action. Anybody else other than paperwork? Anybody else come up with something? Mark?
We had a question on getting the right source material, the right vendors. Whether you deal with the city or the county, the city of Nyssa has a project at their school. I don't think we saw any of that, because even though they're in the county, the city of Nyssa worked exclusively with them and with our county building department, which isn't here in Vail. So just knowing the right kind of contacts or right kind of contractors that you're going to put into your work plan and your budget. Because you can talk to Mark all day at the county and you probably don't have the right information if it's something for one of the cities.
Yeah, just knowing who's to put in there. That's right. Anybody else come up with something interesting? Make a phone call, do the hokey pokey.
I put that I want to come up with like a 5-year plan and see what our goals really are and come up with like the ways that we can actually measure if we're meeting those goals.
Absolutely. I love that, Kaylee. For the library, that's going to be really helpful, particularly since funding is becoming so hard for libraries. Is like, how do you meet those goals and what does the community need and want? So super cool. Well, welcome back, Anna. Thanks for being here. So we are rushing towards the end of the, hold on, I don't want to share that screen. I want to share this screen. Rushing towards the end of the session here. And so I just want to check in a little bit on your project charter. How's that going? What questions do you have, if any? Do you feel like you understand all the pieces you need, and do you feel ready to write a proposal? I know we've gone through a lot of information today about the specifics, the nuts and bolts of a grant proposal, but are there other things that do you feel comfortable that you can move forward? And if you don't, you know where to find me in the chat or online or in an email. And also if you don't, that's a great way to use Kelly Nonprofit and their expertise. Okay, next week is the big one, Meet the Funders. We have 4 fabulous funders coming to speak to you. They will introduce themselves, introduce their organizations, and then answer some questions that we have peppered them already with, but also come with your own questions. And what are the things that you want to know about grant writing, or if there's anything you want to know about these specific about these foundations. So we have the Reser Family Foundation, Oregon Community Foundation, and the Ford Family Foundation. I'm going to save their bios for next week, just so that it's fresh when we meet with them. And so your homework, because we always like to have homework to help you move things forward, is consider your next steps to get your project proposal ready. If you want to read your summary statement or share about your project with the funder at next week's panel, please let me know. Either in the chat today or in the follow-up email, reply and say, I'd really like to share. We probably will have time for about 4 or 5 people to share. So, and it is a completely safe environment to you to say, this is what I'm working on. What do you think? And they will give you good feedback. Think about the questions you might have. Check out their websites. In the follow-up email, I will list the foundations who are coming next week so you can do some more research if you want, if you're interested in learning more. And if there's anything, if there's anything you need to know, Leslie, I've got you down. You want to share about grants, about fundraising through grants. Fundraising is a bigger topic, but if there's anything we have not answered about the granting process, please let us know. I'd like to either answer that in an email or answer it next week if we have a little bit of time. My goal, Jimena's goal, RDI's goal is to make sure you are feeling comfortable and confident in being able to support the organizations you serve through granting. So if there are no other comments, I want to say thank you for being here today. Thank you to the Ford Family Foundation and the Eastern Oregon Border Board for being a part of our Ready Set Grant journey. Stick around if you have questions, if you want to shoot the breeze with us. If not, we will see you next week. Bye, Debbie.